What's going on, guys? TG or Thundergod here. Today, I got some special guests to introduce themselves. Say hi to the channel.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Virtue.
Yo, what's going on, guys? Sage of Thick Cast, thank you for having us on, TG.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. These guys are probably some of my favorite up-and-coming creators in like the Naruto space. So please go check them out. If you haven't, you'll see more of them on the future. They make great stuff, really smart, really cool guys. So definitely recommend them. And today, we have a pretty interesting discussion. We have what if the Kage, the alive Kage, fought the Edo Kage in the war. We'll be splitting this kind of discussion up into 3 rounds. Round 1 will be a 4v4 scenario with the 4th Raikage, Mei, Onokigara versus Rasa, 3rd Raikage, Mu, and Gengetsu. Round 2, Tsunade will be thrown into the mix, and round 3, Edo Tobirama will be thrown in on the Edo Kage side, as that's the Hokage who would have got placed in there during the discussion. But with that being said, not to stick on this too long, like and subscribe if you're new here, or don't, it is. Check out these guys though. Let's get into the video. So starting off, we kind of have to, for round 1, we kind of have an interesting situation because the way we saw this, like when discussing the video, is we saw that each Kage from the respective village would probably fight their Edo Tensei counterpart, considering they would more than likely have a lot of intel on that fighter. So we do, and what we mean by this is like I see a situation where like the 4th Raikage goes to fight the 3rd Raikage first, and this will also make it easier to kind of discuss any stat discrepancies, difference in the character's fighting style. So that's what we kind of saw for this round 1 situation. Now for round 1, the third versus 4th Raikage, this is rather interesting. I'll start off like with the biggest one, speed. I will say this: these two should not be. There should not be a blitz discrepancy between fighters. You know, the speed discrepancy shouldn't be that large. Naruto directly notes after fighting the 4th that the 3rd is also fast. If you really want to be scummy, you can say Naruto's thinking of V1 Raikage, but that's kind of crazy, so we won't go that way. But it is, I do want to note that he does respect the 3rd Raikage's speed and whatnot. So in terms of this fight, speed just isn't the make it or break it point. I will also say there's also the whole durability aspect with the 3rd. I want to clear this up real quick because, you know, everybody brings up the 3rd Raikage like tanking the Rasen Shuriken. It pretty much, he doesn't tank it, but it just isn't enough to tank him down because he pretty much gets his lightning cloak destroyed. You see the Edo Tensei regen take effect and whatnot. He also does take damage from Naruto's Sage Mode Rasengan, so he isn't invulnerable with his durability. You guys want to hop in? What's your opinion on like the 3rd Raikage?
Yeah, so okay, so I think durability, I think that's kind of like one of his best attributes. I think that's like one of the things he's always been hyped up so much for, especially like that, along with his like endurance, like the 3 days of 10,000 shinobi battling. So I think that stuff's really good, but I think part of his durability is kind of hard to go through because he's never, during his alive self, we know he's never really hurt other than himself. But we're talking about the Edo here. And I think the Edo Tensei actually does a lot of the durability part for him because like an example is he gets blitzed by the casting net that Tamari shoots out, and it just rips him to shreds, and he just gets back up because the Edo Tensei heals him. And that's also what happens with the Rasen Shuriken, and it just cuts straight through the cloak and into him, and it almost like rips his arm off, but then he just comes back. So the Edo Tensei really does help out the Raikage to a point where I think he's obviously going to have a durability edge, but not so much of like the normal part. It's more or less the Edo like helping him a lot. And to touch back on that speed point I know you mentioned, I do think this fight is kind of inconsistent in speed. I know some people think like KCM1's like a blitz level above the Raikage, like the 4th one, and I just don't think Naruto, there was a big amp there. And this fight in general, we are all just talking about this, is kind of inconsistent. Like they all use like Earth style in response to the lightning.
You what?
It's weird, dude.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Sage? What do you think?
You know, I think with the Edo Tensei, we know that it does nerf them to a specific degree, but it's like super unquantifiable. So it's like you could make an argument that maybe it nerfed his base durability. You could also make an argument that like we know that like you can amp your durability with chakra, like by specifically focusing on that. I mean, we see that all the time in the series. So like you could make the argument that because he knew that he was Edo and he didn't have to like outright tank those attacks, that he just didn't. But you would just have to be like making these, you know, Olympic level leaps, you know, in mind to kind of come to that conclusion. So even if you want to be as generous as possible, like when you just look at the feats, he should still be able to be harmed. I think the biggest advantage he has in this matchup, even if he were alive, would just be his stamina. It seems that he's implied to be sort of like a stamina monster. So my personal opinion is that the fourth probably has a slight speed advantage. I think durability-wise, they're probably pretty close. Yeah. If you want to give the third an advantage, you can. But he definitely gets it because of the Edo. But then in terms of like their stamina, he obviously has unlimited stamina. So it's just a weird one. I feel like this is kind of a stalemate, to be honest with you. What do you guys think?
I definitely agree, and definitely, the lightning cloak by nature to Butthead. Obviously, it's the right Kage specialty, but it also does allow them to suppress the 8 tails, and that also does kind of segue into a fundamental difference in third and fourth, with the fourth constantly able to come to the 8 tails Jinchuriki, whereas the third is known for his standstill feat and harming himself against the 8 tails. He also cut off all the 8 tails tails, and I will say, in the defense of the third, I have heard arguments that he probably could have not been going all out, as it would have been incentive to actually capture the 8 tails instead of just killing it to where it would revive again. And so there is something to that degree. However, again, the fourth has to combat a constantly evolving, constantly stronger, getting better at the 8 tails chakra, who, in my opinion, only really gets surpassed in the war arc, at least at same station, because the fourth kind of lost a read on B strength, became isolated. They weren't really brothers anymore. You'd be more as a weapon. What are your guys' thoughts on this?
Yeah, again, I think it's really close, and I think the way you worded the 8 tails killer bee stuff is really good, because I think it almost paints like a narrative. Like some people, like I've heard like that fits with like the next generation always surpasses like the previous.
Yeah.
But I mean, like here, really, I think like a speed advantage is what they need, because if like the fourth Raikage is able to hold him down long enough, they could result into like sealing him, and we'll get into that in like a minute.
Yeah.
But I also will say that in terms like also surpassing the third, he surpasses him in like the cloak, and because we know that the electricity just makes the hair stand up. That's why like there's a fan differentiation between V1 and V2 with the fourth Raikage. So I think that stands, but that just kind of means that the third doesn't have that. And I think that like if you don't take the mental lamp stuff with KCM1, V1's able to catch up to KCM1. He's able to keep up, and that's stated.
Yeah.
So I think like V2 might be faster, and it might be able to hold him off, as Sage mentioned, being like a standstill until like maybe someone else can get there. And well, what do you think, Sage? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's weird because like obviously since he's Edo, there's nothing that A himself really has. Like even if you want to say like, oh, he's a blitz tier above him, and he's like just taking a giant deuce on him the entire time, like it doesn't really matter because he's Edo, right? Yeah. So like that's the biggest problem that A would face, and I do think that they're probably pretty close, maybe leaning in the direction of the fourth, but at the end of the day, if he doesn't have a way to actually put him down, it doesn't matter. So I do think that these two kind of stalemate. And then if you want to be as generous as possible to the third, you might be able to say like the Hell Stab gives him a significant AP advantage. So like if we saw a clash between like the Hell Stab and the Lariat, I mean the Hell Stab, first of all, has range on it as well, so like that would give him an advantage there. Yeah. But then second of all, like he's Edo, so he can take a lariat to the face and be perfectly fine. So yeah, I do see this as a bit of a stalemate, and like while the other action is going on, these two are probably just like going back and forth. But I do think the fact that the fourth kind of has a little bit of an edge here would allow for him to stay alive at least until somebody else is able to come help.
I was just gonna say, I did kind of allude to earlier that like the third, he kind of has some weird feats. Like he kind of gets blitzed by like Tamari and then like Dodai, and you guys are probably thinking, who's Dodai?
Who?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, that's all I want to say.
That's my rubber man, bro. Nah,
bro.
Yeah. So the consensus that we're coming to is that the fourth should be able to stall the third. He also should have the stamina ranges and chakra reserves to keep pace with him for a prolonged period of time. The fourth quite literally being stated to be on par with the 8 tails in terms of chakra, or the chapter statement regarding him as it's having tail beast chakra reserves is just not too much contention with this point. So, just the speed disparity not being that big with the slight edge to the fourth really makes it that there isn't really like an objective winner in this case. You could say the third in a prolonged bout. I think that's entirely fine, but in this scenario it just wouldn't get to that point, which we'll talk about a little later. Next up we have Rasa versus Gaara.
Yeah, so in terms of Gaara versus Rasa, I think that like it's pretty clear that Gaara has the advantage here. I mean, he literally beats him in the war. Like And what's funny is like the gold dust that Rasa is using is supposed to make his sand heavier so that it like can counter the sand of Shukaku. Like he even says before he knows it's Gaara that's coming up and he sees the sand, he's like, oh, this is Shukaku's power. I used my gold sand to like counter his whenever he would go rampaging, I would use this to like, you know, kind of take him down or whatever. And then Gaara just like manhandles his gold dust with his sand, and it's really not like a difficult fight for him. And you could honestly also argue that he might be a little bit mental nerfed too because of all the stuff that like his dad did to him and everything.
Yeah.
So Gaara just objectively scales above him. I mean, whether it be speed or it be, you know, just the force that the sand can generate, or, you know, the way that he actually gets him at the end of the fight is by using the sand underneath his feet and then finally being able to kind of like get him in a position to seal him. Like his battle IQ is also higher. So I think this fight probably goes exactly the same way that it did in the manga, and that just means it's over relatively quick.
Yeah, and part of this is chalked up to the Edo Tensei autocorrect, which does enable the Edo Tensei to have some control over themselves. For example, you see that when Gengetsu is fighting against the Alliance, he's in this mode, and he essentially is just letting them go and pick up their weapons while he waits patiently. We're able to see other Edo Tensei, they are able to resist it if their will is strong enough. So that does play a factor, since Gaara did take advantage of the Edo Tensei autocorrect with Rasa forcing the sand above him. But even if it wasn't present, you know, Gaara would just have a better battle IQ since Rasa still didn't see through the ruse itself. Maybe you can say Rasa lasts a bit longer, but generally Gaara should just still be superior.
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch like on their sand.
Yeah.
Because I think Sage did a really good job. And I think that like it just says enough about why Gaara is on like a higher level. Because like Rasa literally has a sand that has a higher variable in the force equation and literally just gets overpowered.
Yeah.
You know, by like a less massed up sand. So I think like he's also just better with his sand. I think he's better at also utilizing his sand than like the autopilot Rasa.
I agree. Gaara in like the third Kazekage just showcased better sand manipulation than Rasa ever did. So we gotta actually see Gaara kind of moving on from this little encounter, and he could go to another battlefield in a relatively quick time. I'm assuming that these fighters aren't that far apart. Even if they aren't, it just makes it easier for Gaara. But we're going to touch on Gaara in a sec, because I also want to cover the other Kage, and we'll come back to Gaara. Next up, we have Onoki versus Mu. Well, you want to take this, Virtue?
Yeah, so I actually think that Mu, like, his back is unironically going to be hurting more than Inoki's. Mu is actually going to be carrying this battle for their side.
The logs.
Yeah. He's carrying them all. Yes, my man. So what's kind of interesting about him is it's implied that he is like capable of taking down every single person in the alliance, with the only one being able to stop him being Onoki, and which that's like, you know, kind of like supported as they equal out in particle style. But Mu has a clear advantage over Onoki, being like his stamina via the Edo Tensei. And even if you want to say that like Onoki's particle style is equal to Mu's instead of like his like Keke Toto or whatever being like higher, then I mean that's fine, I guess, right? But I do think that Mu, with his sensory stacked on top of that, kind of just becomes like the fastest on their entire team. As we can see, there's one point where Gaara's sand is on like the ground, as we mentioned earlier, and the hands come out to grab their legs, and it even blitzes the Raikage, Gangetsu, but then literally Mu senses it, jumps, and reacts to all of them. So, I mean, I think it's being painted relatively consistently, along with the fact that he's also messing up KCM1, like, you know, dodging him from, like, behind, literally. And just, so I think it's kind of portrayed quite a bit that Mu is supposed to be like a monster. What are your guys' thoughts about this?
So we actually do see in the original timeline that Mu straight up fatigues Onoki. Like, they have a particle style clash. Maybe you can apply a couple more, but if it's off screen. But Onoki does note that when he goes to destroy the clam, he tries to use particle style, and he directly notes that I've used up too much chakra on my clash with Mu. And if that's the case, which it is, all Mu has to do is spam particle style to eventually fatigue Onoki to the point where he can't spam it to match Mu. And this is a big problem, because if Onoki tries to pull something, he does, like the original timeline, and actually does retreat. That presents a big problem, because Mu is kind of ballistic due to the fact that he can null his pretty much presence and chakra like signature, which pretty much means that he has kind of free reign to kind of go to a different battlefield in a similar to position to Gaara. We're going to touch on this more, but do you want to add to Mu, Sage?
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, just to add on to what you were saying, like he can fly too. So like whenever he hides his presence, like if it was somebody that couldn't fly and they had to like walk around, then Gaara might be able to sense him using his sand. But because he's able to just like fly around, there's nobody that can detect him.
Yeah.
So he unironically might be able to just like carry the whole team on his back, like go undetected and just like blast people
Bro's
with the
a
particle
sniper,
style.
bro.
Like
even like
Sniper.
dude, he's crazy. So I mean, Mu is a problem here.
Yeah, even like there's like ones where like he goes invisible and he's behind Inoki, and Inoki is literally about to die, and Gar's like, Inoki, behind you, and then he just pops up. He's like, holy god. I didn't even notice Mu,
Yeah.
so I think Mu has a
Even Naruto with his enhanced threat perception, or maybe not enhanced threat perception, but ability to sense evil intent, never senses Mu or makes note of that. Naruto also never makes note of Mu when he goes into Sage mode. And Naruto's Sage mode sensory at this point in the war is cracked. For those who don't know, he's actually able to pretty much see the war vividly. He's able to sense everything that's going on, and it's actually implied he's able to visualize most of the battles that are going on. So while this is going down, he just still never sensed Mu after Mu used vision and was nulling his chakra signature. And I could see a case to say maybe he wasn't focused on sensory, as it's somewhat implied that you kind of have to switch to a sensory mode, but I still do think it's interesting because Sage mode generally does have some more passive sensory capabilities as opposed to just switching into like sensory mode in a similar fashion to Tobirama or Minato. We actually do see either Onogi and Mu like kind of disperse off one another, or Mu just would straight up win in this encounter. And this is very relevant, especially when you look at the last matchup being Mei and Gengetsu. We were looking at Gengetsu before, and he's weird, but he's oddly good. He's like kind of cracked. It's just not presented well or done well by Kabuto in the war. Another byproduct of Kabuto not utilizing the Edo Tensei well. And I know he's fighting an entire war, but it does not change the fact that he did kind of let one of his better pieces that could have been utilized a lot better fall, just pretty much die out. It's very clear that Kabuto was kind of banking on the Akatsuki members and Madara during the war. The biggest issue for Mei is definitely Gengetsu's Mirage, right? And the biggest issue in the original timeline is that he doesn't use it offensively. We actually do know from the data book that it can be used defensively and offensively. So when you consider the fact that he would more than likely stack his Steam Imps with the Mirage and just have mirages of Steam Imps shooting out, essentially just making him unbelievably cracked and not really able to be touched, which would be probably consistent since when he uses the Steam Imps, he gets pretty weakened. I would also add that Gengetsu from a stat perspective is not weak either. We actually see that he does seem to be comparable to the third Raikage in base when they're running towards the Alliance, and even land away from Gaara's sand in a similar time frame, even while the Raikage used his lightning cloak to break out. So Gengetsu also is pretty strong, but the biggest thing I wanted to touch on was just the whole Mirage and Steam Imp point, because that's pretty insane.
Well, it's just, that's a really important thing to note too, that they're faster than like Gaara's sand, because Gaara's sand is ridiculous. I mean, like even back in the 5 Kage summit before the war, which I mean, like it's not that long of a time, but like you could argue, and I think correctly, that his sand outspeeds V2 Raikage A. Like whenever he blocks his kick from hitting Sasuke, like he's got some crazy speed with his sand, and like, his sand's able to even like the auto defense mode block Sasuke's Amaterasu. So like him being able to outspeed Gaara's sand it's not like, oh, it's just a casual thing. No, it's actually super impressive. So
Yeah.
he's a major issue here. And I think Kabuto just like he was using him like an
Fumbled him.
idiot. Like he's just fumbled the bag.
And may I add, like, real quick on that point, sorry to interrupt you, but, like, most people like to argue that that's just A, dropping down, and it's not his actual speed, but that's just wrong, as this
Dumb
type of
argument.
kick, this type of kick is literally called an axe kick, and he's literally just jumping down and moving one leg down as hard as he can, and then, as you mentioned, Gar still just, like, intercepts it with no problem.
The data book also calls it quick, too. It also refers to it as such,
Can I just add, so Raikage A, like the fourth, is 230 pounds. So like if you're making the argument that he was just using gravity to try to break through Sasuke's Susanoo ribcage at 230, like, so you're arguing that dropping a 230 pound weight onto his ribcage is going to break the Susanoo. Like it's a terrible argument. So because when people make that argument, it frustrates me so much.
So, and the problem is, like, when looking at Gengetsu versus Mei has no foreseeable way of countering the Mirage. She has no way of sensing it, unlike Gaara. So it pretty much kind of paints this picture that if Gengetsu actually does utilize his clam in this scenario, there's really nothing Mei can do. Like even her, like, you know, let's say if she used Vapor Style, it doesn't make that much of a difference because she doesn't know how far the clam is. She doesn't know what direction. She has to be wary of it. She might, you know, infect like her allies and stuff like that, and like burn the corrosive, like, you know, burn their skin off and stuff like that. So it's not as if like she can just kind of long range it too in this situation. So it's a tough matchup because she just doesn't have the counter. And I would make the case too that like she doesn't really have a case for the steam imps too, because Gaara's also like really only able to block them with the stand. It's not like he's just straight up tanking them either. So it's like when you kind of have that, there's not too much Mei's gonna do. Like what's she gonna do? Short water style at a Mirage? You know what I mean? Like it's
and even then, like we were just talking about how like Moo's probably the strongest, and we know that like the imp was actually giving Moo quite a bit of trouble like back in the day.
Yeah.
And like this thing, and like I mean like it doesn't really have many like bad feeds. Like this thing is just like murder blitzing Gaara's sand and stuff.
Yeah.
And so which is kind of crazy, as like we were just talking about how it's like blitzing V2A and stuff, and this stuff's just like running around it like it's nothing. So it's pretty crazy.
The biggest drawback is just literally that Gengetsu himself is like fatigued, and even him as an Edo, he's like huffing and puffing and stuff like that. But if he's cloaked up, it doesn't matter in that case. And now the only way Mei actually wins this is if Gaara comes in to support her and actually locates the clam. And I'll say this, Gengetsu versus Gaara is a horrible matchup for Gaara. Gaara actually only won that matchup because of prep with Rasa's Gold Dust. Now in this situation, he does kind of have like the advantage of like having Rasa's Gold Dust in this case, but this is also predicated on the fact that Gaara actually does go to Mei and choose correctly, because if you recall, Moo's still lurking about. Onoki's back is about to break if he tries to break the clam again. And the third versus fourth Kage is going on. So you kind of have a couple different scenarios. So for example, right? What do you guys think what happens if like Mei and Gaara take on Gengetsu? You got to see that taking a similar approach to the canon, or what do you guys think?
Well, here's what could happen. If Moo is just out there lurking around, like completely cloaked up, and he sees Gaara going to help Mei, like there's a chance he could just appear behind him and nuke him with particle style.
Yeah, literally.
So it's like, I mean, honestly, like I could see that because he does try to do like those kind of sneaky type things. So it wouldn't be good. Like, and like you said, Gengetsu's just a terrible matchup for Gaara's sand because of his like oil water type substance being able to just hard counter it. So yeah, I think even if Moo doesn't show up, it would be a difficult task to handle. I mean, do you guys think that like if Gaara is able to locate the clam, that Mei should be able to like break it? Like, how do you guys feel about that?
I actually think like maybe because her lava is actually kind of crazy.
Correct.
And yeah, like even then her water style is like no joke either. Like it does pose quite a bit of a threat to Madara. Yeah, I think she's actually really underrated. Like there was like once, and this is like more of a speed related thing, but there's like once where like Tsunade's down and she like double reacts like before Tsunade can do anything. She outreacts the 5 Kage. So her water style is really quick. And as well as it's also like doing more to like Madara, and he's like, I don't even know if I need to be worried of this stuff.
He literally thinks to himself like, I can't allow myself to get sucked into a technique like that.
Yeah,
I'm like,
and
yo.
He's like letting Kage like hit him, and he's like, this is pathetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something interesting to note too is that like we even see that when she's fighting Madara and the Wood Susanoo clones, that, and she could have done this with lava style or vapor style, it doesn't really matter which one she used, but the bottom line is that when she gets punched by that Susanoo fist from like the full body one, the fist is actually melted, and it's not to the point where it loses form, but the fact that she is having an effect on a higher stage of defense is just still pretty impressive. I'm of the opinion if weighted Onoki with a basic rock jutsu can break the clam, lava style will just tear right through it with no real difficulty. But again, the problem is, right, like let's say Gaara goes and helps Mei. That literally just leaves Moo in the third Raikage to kind of bully the fourth Raikage.
Yeah.
And it's like, bro, what is he doing, bro? The third would literally armbar him. And then, like, if he gets a hold of him, and then like, Moo would just nuke them both with particle style. In which case, it would
getting folded, dude.
Bad counter.
And I would definitely make the case, like, because Gaara versus Gengetsu, if he hops in, is definitely a more, it's definitely a more time-consuming fight, as we saw in the original timeline. Now, granted, I don't want to count like manga pages as timing and stuff like that, but it is implied like also that fight did take a bit of time off screen as well. So even Gaara by himself wasn't able to just run through Gengetsu. It took time for him to locate the clam, and obviously Onoki had to coordinate with that. So even if Onoki and Gaara jump Gengetsu with Mei, you're pretty much left with that trio who's kind of fatigued if they survive versus Mu in the third, which is just kind of like, that's not good. That's not good.
And it's Mu in the third with unlimited refilling chakra, and like Mu can just straight up spam particle style over and over. Like it's just it's not good for
It's
them.
horrendous.
It's not good for them.
Yeah, and like the durability, as we were talking about earlier, that's also poses a problem. Like they're also gonna have to get the seal off, so I don't know, man.
Yeah.
And then like it just poses a big problem. Like I don't know, how do we? What do you think? Like the conclusion to that would be?
I mean, I'll add in real quick too. The issue with these fighters is that Gaara's also forced to use the Grand Mausoleum. Because we also saw that like the basic ceiling, the Edo Tensei did have counters for. The third just blatantly broke out of Gaara's ceiling with Raiton. Gengetsu used his oil like water. Even in Naruto's case, it kind of gives an idea of how much damage you'd kind of need to dish out to just blatantly seal these fighters. For example, with the third, Rasen Shuriken is nowhere near enough to damage him. It requires him to pretty much have his own arm inserted into his chest, which as a result was just shattering his entire body. So even if you give like basic ceiling core a role in this discussion, it doesn't make that much of a difference since we kind of already saw for most of these fighters, basic ceiling isn't really enough. You just have to damage them to that degree. So you kind of have to assume that the alive Gokage pitch a perfect game in this situation. And the issue is, again, that they're not going to have the luxury of like QB Naruto coming in with a Gaara assisted double team to take down Mu. Nah, Mu's just going to be going free reign. So even if you did say like Mei and Gaara did beat Gengetsu, by that time, if Mu had not intervened and Onoki had gone to one battlefield and the other, first and foremost, Onoki wouldn't be relevant against the third unless, maybe you say like the fourth arm barred him and then they used weighted boulder, which could be an issue for him. If we do kind of go with like a more canonized route, and Onoki actually did go to Gengetsu, it's just going to be clipped for the fourth against the third and Mu, as we kind of discussed earlier. So that presents a big issue. And, the alive Kage can win. It's not outlandish. It's just kind of like they have to play this so perfectly. And if Onoki really isn't there defending against particle style, it's just kind of wraps. What would y'all rate the difficulty in terms of the Edo Gokage taking this fight, like out of 10?
Like an 8. Maybe like a 7, 8.
Yeah, I'd lean probably like 7, just because they again, like all the advantages that you were already talking about, but also they have to be sealed. Like this isn't something where the best fighter just wins. It's like you have to not only damage them enough to be able to, if they were alive, put them down. You have to then activate a seal that Gengetsu can't counter, which he can if it's sand. It's just. There's just way too many hoops for them to jump through. So yeah, I do think probably 7 out of 10.
Yeah, that's a good. Next round, we're gonna throw Tsunade in, so we kind of have a 5v5 situation. Let me tell you the good news. We don't need to talk about these characters in relativity to one another because we literally just did that. Now we can talk about the 5 Kage and some of their team combos, because as a unit, a squad, a team, they're kind of dirty. Whereas Kabuto, he utilizes his Edo Tenseis well, but it's not like he's doing all these crazy combo moves. Like, if I'm being honest, he didn't really practice his smash combos. He doesn't really know what to do with these other characters. He knows, obviously, but he's not going to just make them link up and do all these crazy combos. We didn't see Bancho turning into Totsuka Blade or anything crazy with Itachi and Nagato. So,
crazy.
You know what I'm saying? Like, he could have won the war if he was playing this correctly. So, no, I definitely agree. So, we kind of have, Tsunade's now this extra variable in the discussion. She's like this it factor. What do you guys see happening? Where do you think she goes? Talk to me.
Well, I mean, I think that it's very likely that she might go to help Gaara. I think, first of all, they sort of seem to have a little bit of camaraderie there to begin with, because Gaara's kind of friends with Naruto, and the whole story has just kind of push them
almost
into the direction of
spirits. Kindred.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then also I think that Tsunade's not a dummy, and she would know that Gaara's the only one out of all of them that has effective enough sealing jutsu to be able to change the tide of the battle. And so going and helping him to defeat Rasa more quickly would just help their odds in terms of being able to actually seal away these combatants. So yeah, I see her going and helping him, and it just honestly, in my opinion, speeds up the time it would take for them to take down Rasa and then be able to go help out the rest of them.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think also you could also make a case that maybe if the same scenarios happen with Gaara and Rasa, and she sees Gaara crying, maybe she'd be staying back, being more of a medical tactic, and then she sees Gaara crying, she's like, oh no, I actually might need to go help over there.
Yeah.
And I think if she does, it's kind of just over. As Sage alluded to, it's just it's too much for like Rasa to do anything. And then like where do we think like Tsunade kind of goes after that? What do you think?
So there's a couple of different scenarios. One I could see is that she actually goes to heal Onoki.
Back pain.
Yeah, back pain.
Yeah.
And we're not joking about this. This actually happens in the 5 Kage Summit and this arc. He almost dies because of it. Gara actually has to save him from Gengetsu. He's about to get his throat popped out. Damn! Pause.
Oh nah.
But the point is that pretty much his back pain is something that can be mitigated, and she can actually, probably replenish his chakra reserve or amp him to do some crazier feats, like maybe we'll discuss a little later. So that is something to like bring him back in the fight a little earlier. She also does have the option of summoning Katsuyu as well, which I think would make also be a bit of a difference. I mean, granted, Katsuyu can kind of get claimed up by like Mu. He can just come behind her and like shoot the particle style and stuff like that. But Katsuyu is not insignificant. You know what I'm saying? Having that like large summon with like acid that Orochimaru kind of implies might, even if you don't think it would kill him, which I've kind of been on the road of, it does seem to be at least damaging to him because it's like breaking down rocks and stuff like that. So, that might make a difference. I don't think it's tagging any of these Kage, but having that extra support is always welcome. I would make the case that Tsunade would just follow wherever Gara goes to fight Gengetsu and just jump Gengetsu with Mei. Just because, the third versus fourth, she knows she's not as relative because she's not as fast as the third Raikage or the fourth, but maybe subsequently third, depending on your interpretation of some things. So that could be something. We don't want to brush over the third versus fourth Raikage. They're literally the same fighter. We just see these two like kind of like stalling each other out. They're really, and it's not as if Tsunade would make that much of a difference in that fight anyway. So it just doesn't make sense for her to go to that battlefield. So we definitely probably see her moving towards like the Gengetsu and like Mu route and stuff like that. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, there could be some like really nasty combos put out there, but like. First off, like something interesting that might be like to note, like maybe like Katsuyu versus the clam. How does that go down? Like maybe like her acid or something could do something to the clam or cover a distance to where the clam might get hit. Yeah. What do you think on that one, Sage? What do you think about Katsuyu versus the clam?
Yeah, so I actually, whenever we were talking about this beforehand, I totally forgot about this. But Katsuyu, in the war arc, she says at one point that she's able to feel chakra. And so like you could make a genuine argument that she might be able to sense the clam. And so I'm sure that you'll be able to find that, TG. It's weird, but like if she's able to find the clam, which she might be able to, then from there, I think her acid should be able to destroy it. But like, even if it's not, if she knows where it's at, she can alert Tsunade, and Tsunade's smashing through that thing. So I think it gets destroyed either way. Like, because whether it's Gara sensing it or if Katsuyu's able to, like, somebody's going to be able to find it. And yeah, I think, man, Katsuyu's actually kind of like a really useful piece to have on the board. Yeah, because also if Tsunade summons Katsuyu and she wants to go help out in one of the other fights, she can just leave one of those mini Katsuyus on Onaki and continue to just like funnel her chakra there. Because
intel as well, just to like everybody around, Yeah,
absolutely. Well, and so like what a lot of people don't remember too is like Katsuyu, whenever Tsunade is cut in half, Katsuyu makes a comment saying that her healing is based off of Tsunade's chakra. Like all of her healing, after the pain assault, all of that, like it's based off of Tsunade's chakra. So Tsunade could just like put one of the little Katsuyus on all of them and just kind of like give them a sort of constant regen weirdly. Yeah. So like she actually makes a pretty big difference here in this fight, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think there's also some really nasty combos that just make it really hard.
Oh man.
Yeah. Like there's this one that like we were just talking about, and it's like Mei's long range like vapor style that like has like the acid burning, and then Tsunade just runs through it and just starts beating him up. You know what I mean?
Ballistic, dude.
Uses the passive regen just to like save herself. You know what I mean?
It would literally take down. And I want to say something to add to this. Like we do know the range for Mei's like, we see her use the basic hidden mist against Madara, but if you kind of add in that she could do a vapor style in a similar capacity, literally you could make a case that all of the Kage would actually be able to back up. And then Tsunade could kind of go in and like deal with this, or Gara could just play ranged game with this sand and like also take it into Tsunade as support. A decent example of this is like in the anime where they're fighting Madara and like Gara Sand's coming in and like the dust and smoke. There's really a lot of application for this. I had to throw that in, but nah, it's it. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, like I mean, like there's some stuff like maybe like you might think that her passive region's not good enough for her to like completely like hold here because it like I do think there is some novel stuff that alludes to the passive region.
Yeah.
Like I think there's some stuff that alludes like she actually breaks her fist, you know, when she punches and stuff, and then just heals. So it's kind of cracked, and obviously like she's healed from a lot of stuff, like injuries I probably don't even need to like talk about. So I don't think the long range vapor style is really gonna kill her.
Yeah.
I think it's just gonna help ward off like other people, and I think like Gengetsu probably doesn't do much here. I think
we were talking about this before the recording. Yeah, I gotta say this. So we're discussing the fundamentals of Gengetsu's clam, right? And one of the things we were looking at is like, okay, can Gengetsu's clam actually mirage other fighters aside from Gengetsu? This would be cracked if it was the case, honestly, because then he could do any of the other like Edo Kage and just slam. But the issue is, it doesn't seem that way since the clam is directly contracted to Gengetsu, and the data book kind of applies it as well. So I wish I could say like in that capacity it would make a difference, but it doesn't. In which case, like you have Tsunade, who, by the way, Tsunade healing Onoki is not insignificant because when she healed him and he took arguably more damage, well, he took a fuck ton of damage from like he pretty much got a Tengai Shinsei dropped on his head, and then pretty much she heals him and he's able to start using particle style again. And then we even see later on in the war when she's amping him with her chakra, he can do a long range particle style that nuked 25 wood Susanoo clones.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
No,
So if she does something like that, it's clip for all of these dudes. Like if she actually decides that, like he could actually nuke the entire battlefield and just claim all of them. So she's not insignificant, and she does add a lot to the team. And I think the best way to look at her is that her support, she's more so support in this case, but like the support she offers just makes so much of these matchups go so much smoother. You guys want to jump in?
Yep. And yeah, it's like to add to that, how like earlier we were talking about how Mu's like the strongest combatant on their side. It's kind of ironic that I'm like of the opinion, I think you guys agree with me for the most part. I'm of the opinion that Inoki is also probably the best fighter here.
Yeah.
I wouldn't maybe assert. Yeah, I wouldn't probably assert strongest, but I definitely think he's that caliber, you know, above the others.
Him.
Like, and I think that that's clear. Like, he lightens A, and people don't talk about this, but whenever he lightens A, he's flying on him, and he still has to react to that A to hit him to like drop the weight down.
Yeah.
Or to like so to put the weight up. I mean, like so. It's like he's kind of cracked, especially in speed like that. Like his base fish just shatters the clam because he just puts more weight and mass to it. Like so, and also like as you mentioned, he's holding up the entire Tengai Shinsei until he has to drop 2 down.
Yeah.
Like I think like Onoki in this point, he only has the one weakness being his back, and a lot of people like to think it's like satirical and whatnot, but his back is pretty serious. You know, he's getting kind of old, and it's kind of messing him up. So it messes him up even in the 5 Kages summit. So
it's from carrying the stone village on his back for so long.
So Tsunade bringing him back is just like it makes a difference. And I will say it kind of sucks because Getsu kind of does get hard countered by Gaara. They almost hard counter each other, really. Gaara just does have like the ability to like kind of like just blessed a little bit by the battlefield, but he's able to like much find Gengetsu's clan with the sand particles in there. So there is, or like not particles, the sand that is around and stuff like that. So there is something to that. But the Kage really do have a lot more team combos. And, you know, even if we go back to like the 3rd versus 4th, like imagine a lightened 3rd with Onoki on his back, just fighting the lightened 4th, just fighting and making his blows heavier with Onoki on his back. He'd be bullying the 3rd. He would be like bouncing him around, and then the minute he struck, he would like punch a hole in his chest with like a heavier fist. Like any argument where they're comparable goes out the window. So it's not insignificant, and it really just takes one extra Kage for these like team combos to kind of come about.
Yeah. And like if Onoki goes against like anybody else like other than Mu, I kind of think that the person he's going against is kind of just done.
Yeah.
I think like bro.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So Tsunade does make a difference, and I also want you to keep in mind that these are the 5 fighters that were also able to put Madara in such a compromising position that he was forced to use the perfect Susanoo. Now obviously, Madara was sandbagging, it was hanging low that entire fight, but you know, the fact that they did come up with the combination to put Madara in that position to where he was forced to exert, you know, his perfect Susanoo, I think is very telling. to the potential combinations they could come up with. Like, they could also use paralyzing water style any of the Go Kage. If the Raikage and Mei actually decide to work together, Onoki can lighten Gaara's sand for any of these matchups, which he does against Madara. So the possibilities are really endless with the Go Kage working as a unit.
And may I add to to that, like, their chemistry is so much better than these older Kage. Like, yeah, the Raikage doesn't even know that fucking Rasa has like the gold in his hand.
He's like, who are you?
He's like, crazy.
Who are
He's like, you have gold? Yeah, like they don't even know each other. Like they're not like on that level.
Gengetsu hates Moo, bro. He's gonna be like, yo, steal this dude first, bro. No,
yeah,
he's gonna hold him, and be like, get his ass.
Meanwhile, the alive Hokage or the alive Gokage, they're like juggling around, you know. I mean, obviously, again, he was sandbagging, but they're like doing these like power of teamwork, friendship combo attacks against Madara, you know, like landing all these different blows back to back. So yeah, I think Tsunade coming in there makes all the difference in the world, because like she has so many different applications, whether it be through Katsuyu or through, you know, her again amping Oniki or healing the, you know, everybody on the battlefield. Like, it's just it would be too much, I think, for everyone else, because Gaara does still have that, you know, grand mausoleum seal. So all they got to do is beat him down enough to where he can use that, or like you alluded to, get some other sealing shinobi over there.
Yeah, like obviously Moo's like MVP, like if one of them gets sealed, like in the Grand Mausoleum particle style it. But again, when Moo's the last one in a 1v5 against the 5 Kage, like come on, he's gonna run away, or he's gonna be forced to use fission where he can't use particle style, and it's like, okay, what is fission? Like like fission Moo, like it might be a rival to like weaken Steam Hip Gengetsu. What are any of these fighters doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's just there's nothing to it. So what do you guys see as like a difficulty out of 10, and like who do you kind of see like coming out on top for this next round?
Bro, honestly, I mean, I think it completely flips in the other direction. Like, I would say probably closer to like a 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, having the numbers advantage, and then, you know, the abilities that Tsunade adds to the battlefield, and like obviously like we're talking about their teamwork and knowing each other's abilities and not hating each other like the other on the other side. It's just it's a big deal. So yeah, I'd say 6 out of 10.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I do agree. I think Tsunade, she really does help a lot with her being able to heal Inoki, because then that kind of makes it so Inoki doesn't have like the biggest weakness that he does happen to show against like Moo. So I completely agree with you. Yeah, like 5, like 6, something like that. Yeah. A lot closer.
And then for round 3, we're gonna actually make it a 5v5, and we're gonna throw in Edo Tobirama, which would have been the Hokage for like this squad and stuff like that. Maybe you could apply Hiruzen. I don't care. We're using Tobirama. But the point is, you know, Tobirama's kind of coming out swinging, man. He's got it hanging low, man. What? Yeah. I mean, one of these dudes has a Tobirama profile pic. You know what I'm saying?
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Like, I'm just saying.
That's crazy.
So what y'all think happens when Tobirama enters the fray? He pulls up, squatted up, dripped out, fur on his back. What y'all feel about it?
My profile picture whips out Severing Wave and just slaughters him. He just rips him to shreds. He's like, all right, Kage, go over there, and he's just gonna tandem paper bomb them all. Yeah, that's exactly what's gonna happen.
It's gonna be so bad. He's gonna be able to stand over them and ask if they like the angle of the dangle afterwards. It's not good, dude. It's not good.
The Edo Tensei.
I know we're joking, right? I know we're joking around, but I want you to understand something, right? If you're like of a conservative perspective, for example, you think like Tobirama's faster than Madara and Hashirama, right? Which is like fair. It's kind of stated. It doesn't really contradict anything.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
CTG,
you know what I'm saying? Let's say you say that, right?
Oh God.
And then you got Madara looking at KCM2 Naruto, flicking his Gumbai up and slapping him away. So you gotta have a fighter who is able to contend with a live Sage Mode Rinnegan Madara, who would be superior, with a double amp, the Alive amp, and the Rinnegan amp. It's like, okay, are any of the 5 Kage KCM2 Naruto speed? Fuck no. Like,
I gotta, there's like a good comparison. Like Madara, he's like joking around with them, like all like the other Kage who were just saying win. He's like joking with them. He's messing with them. He's like, do you want these, you know, clones use Susanoo or not?
Oh my god, bro. While he's sitting down,
and he sees Edo weaken Tobirama, and he's like thanking the heavens. He's not at full power. He's like, oh, look at you. You used to be the fastest.
He respects Tobirama so much, he uses the Susanoo to block the water spit while Tobirama's
Yep.
held down by Rinnegan Ron. If that's not respect, I don't know what is. I'm just saying, like, that's
he
kind of
doesn't even dodge it. Yeah.
He doesn't even dodge it. So, you know, there is a,
Yeah.
a big speed disparity. And Tobirama having Flying Raijin that he can mark any of the other Gokage, he's just going to fling around. He's going to do all this crazy stuff. And there might be an argument to say, like, Kabuto might fumble this. But we're going to be generous and just, like, put ourselves in that kind of position.
Yeah.
There just really isn't anything the Gokage can do. And then when you kind of combine this with the fact that, like, Moo's going to be invisible, it's like, okay, like, imagine Moo and Tobirama just kind of flying all over the place with, like, Flying Raijin, particle style from, like, a sniper invisible position and stuff like that. It's just, it's no question. He's just going to be running out tandem paper bombs.
Yeah.
Literally, all he would have to do is use the tandem paper bombs by himself. But like, he could also, I think, probably like use the tandem paper bombs on himself and all of the other Edos at the same time.
Yeah.
So like, we saw what
grabs
the
them.
one tandem paper bomb thing did. Like, if you stack 5 of those, oh my god, bro!
Yeah.
There's not gonna be much earth
Destroying
left
the deity, the deity gates.
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
crazy. But
And he-
one thing that's like
Oh, yeah, go
also
ahead.
should be taken into account, like with Mu, and like also for Gengetsu due to the clan, Tobirama's sensory is like country levels.
Cracked.
Like,
It's cracked.
yeah, it's ridiculous. So he will be able to sense where the clam is, how to do it. Tobirama's one of the smartest fighters. So Severing Wave just rips through the clam.
Wait,
you know what I
Tobirama's
mean?
on Gengetsu squad.
Oh, no, yeah, you're right. You're right, bro. You're right.
Keep
Chill,
this
chill, chill,
in.
chill,
I'm
been a
not.
long
This
call.
can't stay in the
Chill,
video.
chill,
100%. 100%.
Oh no! Don't get that in! Don't get that! Oh no!
No, Tobirama cleans up like he breaks the Edo Tensei like Madara, and he just
team.
wipes all of the
I also want to add too that, like, even if you think like tandem paper bombs, like, there might be a chance for like the right Kage, for example, to dodge out the way if you're maybe being a little weird with it and say like, okay, Hiruzen can jump out the way of them. It doesn't matter because he just does it again and again because he's just gonna keep nuking himself. You also have Tobirama who can create tsunamis on his own on some Kisame level type energy. So again, he's gonna like be changing the battlefield as well, which would just also link up with Gengetsu as well. They're just gonna be spamming water. So there really isn't too much. And yeah, you could say Gaara can do it too, but like, imagine Tobirama and Gengetsu infused water oil with like a large tsunami. All of Gaara's defenses are gone, man. So even if I did grant you like these super low interpretations, it just wouldn't really be possible for the 5 Kage. I cannot overstate the advantage they will have. You're pretty much shoving kind of like a moderate tier fighter, this warring 8 tier fighter, into the Gokage squad and just like, you know, so it's just pretty bad.
Maybe like maybe
and
Tobirama.
trying to use like, I was gonna say, trying to use like Hiruzen as like getting out of the way of the tandem paper bombs as an anti-feat is so disingenuous for 2 reasons too. Like, number one, he straight up says like, oh, this is his technique. So like, he knew what he was doing.
He knew what he had to do.
Yeah, he's already prepared his counterattack. So like, he knows what's going on. You gotta think these guys were on the battlefield together a ton. So like, he knows what he's doing. But secondly, like, Hiruzen's fast. Like, old man Hiruzen, like, against Orochimaru, not super fast. Like, you know, whatever, he's an old guy.
Above the 5 Kage.
Yeah.
He stayed above the 5 Kage.
Extends to the Sanin pot, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, it is
Like,
what it is.
Him like showing up, and I know like a lot of people are like combat speed versus travel speed, but like, we're talking about travel speed here because he's running away from this explosion, right? Like, his ability to get away from there is not like an anti-feat, considering the fact that he showed up to the battlefield at the same time as Hashirama and Tobirama. Like, Hiruzen's fast. So like, let's not sit here and like pretend like him being able to get out of the way of the explosion is like, oh, these other guys might be able to. No, absolutely not. They're not dodging that at all.
Tobirama, like Hashirama, more level opponent than like these like, you know, newer like Kage who are like getting made fun of by Madara. You know, it's not, he's like, you're nothing compared to what he was. You know what I mean? So it's not fair. It's fair.
Pretty bad.
Maybe he'll use like the blade of Thundergod, like the lightsaber that motherfucker created.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, I'm dropping that shit.
Come on. Yeah. Well, I have a question for both of you guys. This is something that we didn't talk about, but like, do you guys think that if we sub out Tobirama for Hiruzen that it goes much different? Because if we're going Edo Hiruzen, like especially if it's like a prime, like I don't think it's much different.
We can talk about this bonus round real quick with like Hiruzen like in reference, but I will say, you know, Edo Hiruzen's pretty cracked as well. He literally can just like make 5 shadow clones, all 5 nature releases, matching the Giru Zetsu. And obviously, it's not Hashirama's Shinsu Sanju. I also want to make that clear. It's not stated to be. Giru Zetsu is not stated as a user of the technique in the data book. So it's probably a worse variation of it. It was stalling the 5 Kage. Now, granted, they were fatigued from the Madara fight. However, Mei's dialogue does imply that they did have a decent amount of chakra when fighting the gear. Like, they note that, oh, I'm out of chakra now and stuff like that. So when you kind of consider this, it's like, man, like, okay. And even Shikamaru notes, like, without the 3rd, we're done. So imagine the same thing where he makes 5 clones and then just shoots out large scale, like, nature releases, brings out Enma, does all this crazy stuff. So there really isn't too much. There, like, Edo Hiruzen is just a lot of the same. It's maybe I would argue like the Edo Kage or the live Kage would probably do a little better, but not to the degree where it like makes a difference. They just don't get hit by like a teleport.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah, like he's not coming out with the tandem paper bombs and just nuking the whole battlefield. You know, like But I do think, you know, Hiruzen is super impressive in the war. Like, he's not able to get out of the way of the attacks of Jubito, but he's at least able to, like, see them coming and then, like, obviously see Tobirama's counterattack and all that stuff. So he should be, like, a speed tier above pretty much all of the alive Hokage. I mean, you could argue, or all the alive Gokage, you could argue that, like, lightened A might be faster, but, like, I don't even know about that. So,
You just don't see him even when he's alive. His full capability, because you know he's dealing with like afflictions, Maru, and the minute he kind of does get serious and like does resolve himself to kill Orochimaru, maybe you guys use mental, but he immediately disarms him and just grabs him with the Reaper Dead Seal. So it's like, this isn't cap. It's just, you know. But Virtue, you want to hop in? I can hear it, man.
No, I just wanted to, like, most people don't know, like, in that fight, Orochimaru's like Edo Tensei is not very good, and so we can actually see that. Like Hiruzen, like when he's really old and suppressed, him reacting to Tobirama and Hashirama is not like what you think. It's actually him reacting to Orochimaru, as we can see. Like Orochimaru is the one that's actually using the hand seals for these. So it's actually reacting to that, and then like once it actually goes to 1-on-1, he's like, all right, I'm actually gonna have to kill you, and he just goes all out. And like none of this is talking about like a prime Hiruzen, like. He literally has 7 statements that say he's the strongest Kage or Hokage like ever.
More latent potential than Tobirama. Like
exactly.
Crazy.
As a kid.
I know Hiruzen just slams. He's literally just a lot like old man Hiruzen. Like none of the drawbacks and all of the strength increases. So it's just it's unlimited chakra, all this crazy stuff. So that's the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I sure did. Definitely check both of these guys out. They make fantastic content. Definitely some of the newer guys I back. Both their channels will be in the description below. Let me know if you guys agreed, disagreed, why, any video ideas, anything like that. That's always welcome in the comments. And I'll catch you next time. Bye.